Anyway, we are here and we are going to continue with the show. This is a panel discussion on the roadmap in ending sexual and gender-based violence in Liberia. Again, the government of Liberia and partners roadmap on ending SGBV in Liberia. We're going to be discussing the roadmap. We're going to be looking at its strengths and weaknesses, and also making recommendations. With me to discuss this, I have Ms. Jackie Sayer. She's a member of the SGBV awareness group here in the U.S. Ms. Sayer, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm happy to be here.
Next, we have Zoe Neal. She's a co-host and Focus on Liberia, the Liberian woman. Zoe, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Zoe, can you, I'm not hearing you. Can you say something? Welcome.
Thank you, Dennis, and I'm glad to be here. No, I was saying thank you, and I'm glad to. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, I can hear you very well. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome you again to Focus on Liberia. This is the roadmap to ending sexual and gender-based violence in Liberia. The roadmap was published by the Ministry of Gender, Children, and Social Protection. And we are here to discuss the roadmap. We're going to be showing on the screen the roadmap so you yourself take a look at it. And let's begin this way to just show you the roadmap. Again, all right. We got our roadmap. That's the government of Liberia and partners roadmap on ending SGBV, a call to action. This was done 2020, and the timeline is from 2020 to 2022. This roadmap was presented by the Minister of Gender, Mrs. Wilhelmina Piso Sidita, on behalf of the Inter-Ministerial Task Force on SGBV. Again, just to give you a little summary, from April to July 2020, the ministerial meetings on rape occur at the behest of the Minister of Gender, Children, and Social Protection, culminating into the formation of the Inter-Ministerial Task Force on SGBV. So basically, the high-level summary, the roadmap concretized to address SGBV so that by 2022, and is being guided by the PAPD. That's the policy document that is being used by the government of Liberia. The roadmap is making a call for a declaration of rape as a national crisis. So there are some key challenges they talk about, and those challenges, and based on those challenges, we have the objectives and the goals of the roadmap. So that's just a brief on the roadmap, just to bring you up to speed. So let me welcome again my guests. Let's start with you, Jackie, on the roadmap. This is the roadmap by the Ministry of Gender, and it's in collaboration with other ministries like Justice and other ministries, so they call them the Inter-Ministerial Task Force. Briefly, what jumped out of you? This roadmap has been around for some time now. Your brief comment on the roadmap.
Well, thank you, Dennis. Yeah, I went over the roadmap like Zoe did, and like members of our organization, the Liberian SGBV Awareness Movement. We all went over the roadmap. There are several things that we think needs to be strengthened. There are several things that we think should be included, that's not included. And there are several things that we think should not be in, and it's in. But I look forward to discussing it because I think that the more we discuss the roadmap, the more we can listen to each other, the more we can strengthen it, expand it, make it better, so that we can eliminate SGBV in Liberia.
Thank you. Zoe, your initial thoughts on the roadmap?
My initial thoughts are very much similar to that of Jackie's. I went through the roadmap, and I think overall the objectives are pretty laid out, But then as you go deeper into it, you realize that there's a need for more conversations around it because I see more wish list than action. And so I'm looking forward to a discussion around how those wish lists can actually be transformed into practical, engagements that will fulfill the objectives that have been listed.
Great. And thank you. We were supposed to have Titus B. Pakala. He's a human rights advocate in Liberia, a young man. Also, Attorney Mombedo Joa, who's a legal counsel. And but we had a technical difficulty, so we're still trying to get them if possible, or they would not be here. But we're going to have hopefully part 2 of this. So let's begin. First of all, this roadmap is for sexual and gender-based violence. Let's begin by the need for a roadmap to ending sexual and gender-based violence. It may seem that it's something that is obvious, but let's start from the beginning. What's the need? Why is a roadmap needed to ending sexual and gender-based violence? Zoe, let you go first.
Well, I think it's a need because not over the years, it's just more profound right now. But the issue of sexual and gender-based violence is something that has always been present in our society, and it has become a little bit more prevalent. And nothing substantial has actually really been done to either address the issue, the root causes, or even set up any form of accountability for those who are held, liable and responsible for those actions. So we see over and over and again our young girls, women continuously facing these issues. So definitely there's a need for it because it is a crisis in Liberia.
Hmm. Sexual and gender-based violence is a form of violence that hinders gender equality and downplays the rights to women and children economic development. That's a quote I got from Titus Pakala, who should be part of the, but due to technical difficulties. So, Jackie, you are part of the sexual and gender-based awareness group here in the U.S., and you've been talking SGBV all along. So, for the government of Liberia to have a roadmap, to me, is something that is that your group embraces. Tell me more about how this is important to have a document or to have a framework that will address SGBV in Liberia.
Definitely, we are very excited about the roadmap. The, was sorely needed, and the reason for the roadmap can be seen in the first indicator, right? Number one, it says declaration of rape as a national crisis, and it is a national crisis. And if we're talking about the roadmap and if it's on track, at least for number one, it is on track because by September of 2020, it was expected that rape will be declared a national emergency, a national crisis, which it has been. Um, for a country with the population that we have, the rape and gender-based violence rate is extraordinary. It is unheard of the amount of rapes that go on, reported and unreported. So I think that the roadmap is needed because there were disparate groups working not in concert with each other. So I think the roadmap brings all of the stakeholders and the players together for them to work in a concerted effort to eliminate SGBV.
And that's why the first part of the roadmap, as the So I'm running into this problem again, which is the objective and the goal. Even though on this sheet, I thought the little, kind of little confused objective and goal that more or less look the same, but I get the point, right? The objective is to design a national comprehensive policy framework that supports the identification of key issues affecting the dignity, development, and empowerment of women and girls, as well as track key actions, interventions to protect the right of women and children, particularly girls, against SGBV. Then there are two more goal or objectives, and then the goal to reduce SGBV against women, girls, and children through driving change and fostering accountability. So I thought there was a little confusion there with the goals and the objective, but that's okay. But we know that we want to reduce this, right? So the goal to me, I don't know how you look at it, or the objective was so broad that I couldn't really pinpoint as to exactly what it's trying to. We're gonna go into the strength and wisdom, but I'm just saying, looking at the objective and the goals, it did not really drive my attention to exactly what they needed to be accomplished.
Yeah, I think you're right because, as Zoe said, it's more a wish list, you know, and there are so many things that are jam packed in it that sometimes you don't know where to begin. You don't know where things connect or diverge. So, but I was looking at the strategic shifts, right?
Yeah.
If we look at that, they talk about enhanced accountability and sustainability. That's the first one, and then they talk about collective action, and then they talk about full engagement with local actors. So the strategic shifts are kind of like encompass all of these objectives and things. So I was looking at it and going down the pathway or the roadmap to see if things have been accomplished, if there are some good things that we can say the gender ministry and the government has done well. And as I said, the key action areas, the first one is on track.
Right. And Jackie, we're going to get to we're going to really put the milestone on the
Oh, okay.
screen and go through it. What I thought of from the beginning is I wanted to see also, like, this is a PowerPoint document, right? So
Yes.
I was looking at, I don't know if we have anywhere where the actual literature out of which this PowerPoint was born, if it exists. Because what I see here, I wanted to see, uh, and I know the work is being done already, except that we don't, it's not in the roadmap, as to the root causes. Because before you address an issue, you must know what is causing it, right? So based on the roadmap from the beginning, the background, do you see what I see? Do you see that the causes of SGBV are being laid out before we even come to prescribe the roadmap to ending them?
Um, do you want me to answer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, the causes of SGBV is very prevalent in our country, and we see it actually. I'm becoming more aware of it as I listen to people speak on talk shows, social media. It seems as if they see nothing wrong in making jokes about women, using women as examples in rowdy scenarios, and talking about, oh, if my girlfriend had this and my wife had this, so they see nothing wrong. So there's this pervasive culture of I would not say that all talk leads to SGBV, but it is a form of SGBV. So I think that is very prevalent in our country. I think that when you say they haven't addressed the issues and then they're doing the roadmap, if you look at the roadmap, some of the things that are in there, like increased awareness, right? So they do, the stakeholders, they acknowledge that these things exist. And so what they want to do is they want to be able to address it and so they lay out, right, the roadmap to go. But I agree with you, Dennis, that I think that for our country, yes, I think that the SGBV rate, the pervasiveness of making women or children lesser or the other, I think that has what has brought us to this point. I know that the roadmap is pulled out of three different documents. If you look at the beginning of the roadmap, it says we're using three different documents of the past, right? 2005, 2012, and something. And I was looking at it, and actually, one of those documents, it talks a lot about women representation in government. It talks about the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf administration and how she had like 28% of ministers, and then they had legislatures that were women. So one of those documents talk a lot about meeting the threshold of having women lawmakers, women represented in government. So that's one of the documents that's pulled in. I did not have time to look at the second document, but I assume that the second document talks about women's role in ending SGBV. But I think that even the fact that this document came about shows you that people are aware, government is aware, and the people of Liberia, they are aware that something needed to be done. And that's why we have this document. Yeah.
Zoe, when I look at the background of the document, what I see that stood out to me was which, because as I was looking at the root causes before, it says traditional harmful practices including female genital mutilation and early child marriage are entrenched in social norms and values that are detrimental to the rights of the girl child and women. I saw that it weighted more on traditional harmful practices than anything else. Did it occur to you that way as well, that maybe one of the major causes of SGBV is traditional harmful practices, or am I reading it wrong? Zoe?
Coming back to what I'll answer that, let me just pull off of what you said earlier. When I look at the roadmap, can you hear me?
Yes.
Going on. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah,
yes.
I don't know what's going on. So I was saying, coming back to what you said earlier when I was looking at the roadmap, that was one of the things that struck me from the beginning was I did not see, any emphasis laid on what the root causes are. And I did see a little bit of, female genital mutilation mentioned in certain sections of the roadmap. And we all know that in order for you to be able to adequately address any issue, you have to first identify what are those things that are causing the issue, first of all. So, in the absence of acknowledging the complexities around sexual and gender based violence in Liberia, it's like you're just throwing something. So, in my opinion, you're throwing something out there and it targets conveniently a particular aspect of sexual. Female genital mutilation is just one aspect of sexual and gender-based violence in Liberia. There are a lot of other issues. So I feel the same about the way you saw it, that there's much focus on one minute aspect of what covers sexual and gender-based violence in Liberia. And I think they need to do a little bit more, not researching, but acknowledgement of all the social and societal issues that have actually been problems for us over the years that led us to where we are when we talk about developing a roadmap. And that is not just a female genital mutilation and traditional cultural practices. It goes way beyond that.
Jackie, and ladies and gentlemen, before I even go back to Jackie, you are watching Focus on Liberia. We are discussing the government of Liberia and partners roadmap to ending sexual and gender-based violence. We are discussing the roadmap. This is the tip of the iceberg. We're going to go deep into the roadmap now, starting with the actual roadmap. All right, and that is on It's called the Pathway Internal Institutional Policies and Interagency Systems. That's the roadmap. The roadmap meaning from 2020 to 2022, SGB in Liberia will be ended. And here is the way this is the pathway we're going to achieve it. So let me put on the screen that roadmap, and we can start talking about it and see where we are when it comes to the roadmap. Jackie, you can begin from there. I think the key actions, and that is on outcome number one. Outcome number one, what is it that the Interministerial Task Force want out of this is to strengthen and enforce legislations, policies, and standards that support the prevention and response to SGBV, including female genital mutilation and other harmful traditional practices. So that's outcome number one. And we're going to go through that briefly.
So, so we have 1.1, right? Is on track, right? Declaration of rape as a national crisis. We're done with that. The second one is to conduct a peer review meeting on the revision of laws and policies relating to SGBV in order to identify gaps and overlapping in the laws, right? And that was to be done October and December of 2020. So I'm assuming that they did that because it was with various ministries and not public. It was not for the public. So we're hoping that they will let us know that they've done this meeting and they have about the revision of the laws. So if we go to 1.3, support the review, amendments, and passage of anti-SGBV laws, including simplification and dissemination. And that timeline is for January 2021. So we're still in January. So we are hoping that that is what they're doing now and that they're on track for that. Develop a concept on the construction of a new prison exclusively for SGBV perpetrators. Now, that was for September of 2020. Obviously, we know that that has not happened. There's no new prison that I know of. The Ministry of Justice is not building a new prison exclusively for perpetrators of sexual violence. So we know that they're behind on that. Then 1.5 is to develop a concept to establish a specialized SGBV response unit. And that's for September 2020. And we know that that has not happened because even listening or reading newspapers, you see that when victims are raped, nobody goes there. Sometimes the family has to take the child to the hospital. Sometimes they have to do a GoFundMe or ask for funding. So we know that 1.5 is not on track. 1.6 is to develop a concept to introduce anti-SGB lessons within schools curriculum K through 12. And that was for September 2020. That has not happened. So let me just go a little bit in detail for that one. They are to develop. Should I tell it? Should I go?
Yeah, Jackie, before we go into that, I want us to look at the responsible agency and then the supporting stakeholder group. That to me says a lot as well, right? Like who's responsible to do this? Number one, the only one that has been achieved so far is the declaration of rape as a national crisis.
Yes.
And, the Office of the President, the Minister of State, Ministry of Gender and Children Protection, they are the responsible agencies to do that. And that has been achieved. Also, supporting stakeholders for all of them, we see international organizations, donors, INGOs, NGOs, and the civil service organization or CSO. I just wanted to highlight that. Continue.
Okay, so if we look at 1.6, which is to develop a concept to introduce anti-SGBV lessons within schools curriculum K through 12. The timeline was for September of 2020, which was last year. And I just want to take some time to go through, because I did go through the curriculum to look and see if it's on track, what needs to be strengthened and what needs to be done. So if you look at it, so I looked at the curriculum and I found out that, okay, so the only way you're going to teach or you're going to infuse anti-SGBV in the in the curriculum is really through the religious and moral course. You're not going to introduce it in math. You could, I guess, in geography, in history. You're going to do it in that. So I looked at that. So if we look at it, we know that from grade 7 to 9, because from grade 1 to 6, we have no, which is funny because from grade 1 through 6 is when kids are very vulnerable to rape, to grooming, to coercion, you know, to do other things that go against the normal practices. But in the religious and moral syllabus, there's nothing. From grades 1 through 6, there is nothing about about infusing the curriculum. There's nothing in there. There is one place where they talk about coloring. So the little child will color, and in that religious and moral syllabus, you're coloring the Good Samaritan, right? The good thing about that is that we know that Brenda Brewer Moore just did a book on young kids and their bodies and how to keep themselves safe. So that is going to be introduced in the curriculum, right? It's a coloring book, but at least they will learn as they go through that. In grade 7 to 9, right, we have religion again, religion and moral, right? Religious and moral. But they talk mostly about substance abuse, the health effects on substance abuse. So there's nothing specifically there about sex education, nothing, you know. In grade 7, in period 3, they talk about sexual sin and the effects on society, you know. So then they have this thing where they visit to the church, to the mosque. Now, if you really want to strengthen some of these syllabi about anti-SGBV, if the students they take a field trip to a church or a mosque, which is a good thing because it's religious and moral course. But it would help if they would take a field trip, maybe to the hospital. Maybe you can bring young adults in who have had teenage pregnancies, who have gone down this path. And maybe they could come and speak to the students and say, you know, maybe, you know, if I had known this, this is what you should know. Something like that will strengthen the curriculum. The last thing, Dennis, is that I found it really interesting that it talks a lot about religion. You know, it talks a lot about religion, all the effects of the Old Testament. Talk about the disciples and things like that. But what I felt should be strengthened, especially in grades 1 to 6, is not just the coloring book, but to talk about the harmful effects of touching. You know, touching, this is my body, don't touch certain places. I think they can infuse that. I think what the gender ministry needs, working with the Ministry of Education, is to bring in parents, to bring in civil society and say, how can we teach our very young kids about wrongful touching, about grooming? How can we keep our kids safe? So that is missing from the curriculum. And I found it very interesting that in grade 9, they talk about chastity and morality. So all of the sexual information, the information that deals with safe sex or anti-SGBV, is tied to sin, morality, chastity. You know, so instead of focusing on that as sin, say this is what goes on. This is how you can protect yourself. So I found that very interesting that the deadline was September 2020 to infuse the curriculum. And so if you're looking at the roadmap, that hasn't happened.
Zoe, we look at the roadmap, and Jackie will go more into that because That's exactly why the gender ministry or the roadmap talk about inculcating this kind of education in the curriculum, but it has not happened. So you're not going to see what you're talking about because it's not there. And talking about that, it could be infused through social studies, even English, or essays,
Yes.
writing, spelling,
Yeah.
Oh,
everything.
yeah. Dennis, I mean, before you come in, Zoe, I just wanted to make a point that in grade 7, right? They have a research paper, but they tell you what you should do the research on, and you're doing the research on tithes and offering, the purpose of reading the Bible, right? And that's all well and good, but you could also say to them, what about teen pregnancies, the effect of teen pregnancy on a child, the effect of teen pregnancy on a society, So we're not saying that religion is not good, but the course is religious and moral, So if you would add more of that other topic for the research paper, that would be fine. Yeah, sorry, Zoe.
All right.
No,
Zoe,
no.
Zoe, from 1
And
to
just
6, we just accomplished one, which is declaring rape as a national crisis. Your thought?
and my thought exactly is out of 6 items, we've accomplished only one, which has to do with just declaring something that we already know. Every single person in and out of Liberia already know that rape is a crisis in Liberia. So honestly, not to take away from the hard work of those who put this document together, but I don't see that as a major accomplishment, just declaring something that's not followed up by actions. If you look at 1 and 6 and you see how even is formulated, everywhere it says develop a concept, develop a concept. A concept is just what it is, a concept, until it's actually put into action. So if you look at the way the roadmap is formulated, it's almost formulated in a way that it leaves opening to, I don't know, like there's, because even when we're saying right now, they haven't accomplished anything. Technically, they have accomplished everything based on the way the roadmap is structured. Because the roadmap did not say develop any action. It says a concept. And a concept is what it is until you put it into actions. So that's the first problem I have with the way the roadmap is formulated. Then a second part that I haven't had a chance, but just a thought around that conversation. I think much emphasis is placed on the little girls in these educational process. What do we need to do? What about the education for the young boys? What is the educational structure in there? How do you accept no as no? What is around only the victims and how they can protect themselves from their perpetrators? I think the education should also be focused around those who are actually perpetrating the acts. And so that's why I have a little bit problem with how it's being structured.
Hmm. And Zoe, you are right. That brings us to number 1.7 through 1.12. Even though from what we've seen so far, 1.1 is the only one declaring, just telling everybody that this is bad. That's all we have achieved so far. So let's go into the rest, few more. And Zoe, to your point, we're going to look at this whole idea of the concept. 1.7 says develop a concept on anti-SGBV and awareness, focusing on simplifying anti-SGBV related laws targeting young people. The key word there again is developing a concept. 1.8, develop a concept towards establishing more one-stop centers. And that's supposed to be done both September 2020. That has passed. 1.9, develop a concept to addressing FGM. Keyword, develop a concept.
Mhm.
Zoe, you brought about this. Let's talk about the concept being developed. So up to 1.12, which 1.12, which is in October, none of these have been achieved. But at least to your credit, The concept has been developed. It's in the mind.
Exactly. So, and then just to emphasize on what I was saying again, because if you take this and you really hold somebody accountable to a concept? No, you can't. So when I look at something like this, it creates a framework that frees you of accountability. And that's why, unless there are some other documents that we don't have from which this was pulled, that shows how these concepts are supposed to be transformed into actionable, impactful community engagement that you actually can see results, then it is just, like I said, what is it? It is a concept, and probably they have. We don't know if they haven't developed a concept, but they probably have.
So from 1.7 to 1.9, it has not been accomplished.
No.
Nope.
What does this tell us?
It tells us that the document was delivered, or it was created when everybody was screaming about the high rate of rape in the country. So it was not a document that had been prepared beforehand. It was not a document that people had deliberated over to say, how do we go about doing it? Was just, I mean, even if you look at it, it's almost like pieces thrown together. There's no coherent policy or framework that you can say, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to get to where we're going. It's just, it's really, because, if, like I said, with the curriculum, if you're talking about coordination, right, then the ministries will work together. So if you say that the Ministry of Justice will build a prison, right, for rapists, then what is the gender ministry doing to hold, because they are the overarching ministry? Are they contacting the justice ministry to say, how far have you gone with the prison? Because it should have been done September 2020. So the thing is that all of these stakeholders, we have 18 stakeholders, and then we have these NGOs and our NGOs. But where is the coherence? What is what is the gender ministry doing to make sure that these things will be done? Even if it's not within the time, maybe a month later, but it's September 2020 has gone, and we're still waiting.
Right. And isn't evaluation or the coordination supposed to be part of the roadmap? Zoe, you
And
do some of this planning stuff.
and that's where I was going to come in, and you just took that out, Dennis. When I look at the entire roadmap overall, even away from just this one page we're looking at right now, I don't see no measure. Okay, what's the scope of how this evaluation is supposed to pieces? How do you measure impact? I don't see any of that. So again, I may be wrong, but when I look at it, it just seemed like a really nice and visually appealing wish list that's missing the key components of how actual actions are actually supposed to be taken that would take them where they need to go with their objectives.
And that is very important. And that's what if you go back to the objective and the goals that I talked about earlier, goals are normally broad, right? Objectives now are the one that's supposed to be measurable, okay? That will give us a definite, that should be actually tangible. Your goals can be intangible, but when it comes to the objective, that's the place we want to see, and we didn't see that. So I'm not expecting to see anything that you can actually accomplish. Another word that I saw that came very frequently, and because we have gone almost halfway and we didn't see anything accomplished, that tells us that it's just 1.1. Another thing was, besides developing a concept, Another word that stood out to me as you go through the roadmap is operationalize. One key area, and any of you can help explain what this means to operationalize the DNA machine. What does that look like to you? Is it that this DNA machine is non-functional, they want to make it
Maybe
functional?
it's broken. Cause that's what I thought when I saw that. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Jackie got a different point of view. When I saw that, I was like, "What does that even mean? Is there some broken machine that needs to be, back in full operation? Like, what does that mean?" Then below that, they got something that says strengthening the capacity of educational officers. Those are just vague terms. When you look at this report, this roadmap, honestly, most of the words in place EDS seem extremely familiar, seem like a generic term that you will find on any site. They are just a piece of the structure of what's supposed to happen, but it still hasn't been tailored to what are the actual actions that are tailored to Liberia's specific situation and how it will be done. When you say strengthen the capacity of educational officers, what are we talking about? Are we talking about pay increase? Are we talking about training? What are we talking about when we so just it's to me it's just a lot of vague and generic terms that really don't add up to actionable, you know, things. So I don't know, Jackie, what do you think?
I think that it's just a play on words. So if you look at the roadmap and you look at 1.6, right? 1.4, right? It says to develop a concept on the construction of a new prison, right? So that concept should have been done September 2020. So that's the concept you're developing. You're just discussing the concept. And then if you look at 1.11, it says establishment of a new prison exclusively for perpetrators. So that's June 2021. So that will be the international donors who will come together to do the prison. So actually what you're doing in September, or what you should have done in September, was just to discuss the need for the prison. And then you probably would have to go out and lobby to international donors to be able to get the funding to build the prison, which will then be built by June 2021. So if you see, most of these things, they're just dependent on funding, either from the government or either from international NGOs, and that also creates a problem when you have to wait for the funding to be able to do your work.
And as we go through, and I like this, 1.4 in September, you develop the concept.
Yes.
And that developing concept again, and develop the concept. I don't know whether it will mean something like if you were developing, if you are supposed to build a house or a prison, is developing a concept, does that include maybe the floor plan, the house plan, and maybe procurement? What really does that developing concept look like when it comes to building a prison?
Dennis, if we keep talking about develop the concept, but if we go further down, develop a concept, because you can't really say they didn't have the meeting, right? They could have had the meeting and not made it public. So we can really say, okay, we'll wait till June 2021 to see if the prison is built. So if the prison is built and we know that, oh, okay, they did have the meeting, they did get funding, and they did build the prison. But as we go down, if we go down, look at 1 point, I think 13, 1.13. As this is not develop a concept now, right? This is not develop a concept. What does it say?
Establish and operationalize sex offenders registry and rape dashboard and alert system, October 2020.
Yes. So now, like when I'm moving in an area here, I just go to the sex offender registry and I put my zip code, and I know exactly who's around me, who are sex offenders, right? So this now is not developing a concept. This should be established and operationalized. But it was for October 2020, right?
Right.
Okay, so where is it?
It's not there, but who is responsible to make sure this is happening? The gender ministry?
The,
And what
the,
is the mechanism through which they're supposed to be checked?
yeah, it's the
Well,
gender ministry.
Go ahead, Zoe.
no, I was saying no. I agree with her. I'm assuming whatever agency that they have listed it as responsible agency. But I would just kind of. I don't know if you plan on going through this slide by slide. But something else caught my attention at the very end of the roadmap, because some in between, some areas have concepts and some areas actually have actions that that should be taken, right. In the areas that have substantial actions, if you notice, there are no time frames listed. So it's just open-ended, even though this is supposed to be a roadmap up to 2022. They leave those open. But at the very last, I think it's a slide that talks about the indicators. Now they show you, they have listed there's a 2021, an indicator of the number of beneficiaries for this engagement, the number of beneficiaries, but there's no number listed. So then that got me thinking, what is the goal at the end of the day? Because if you were expected to deliver to people, you have a roadmap for something, and you set goals and you set objectives, and you come at the very end. Now it takes away from anything else in this document, because you come at the very last end and say, okay, yes, here are the indicators, the milestones through which we can measure our impact. And there's no number. You just put a number sign and say number of beneficiaries, and you say 80%. 80% of what number? So what are we supposed to be holding you accountable to? How do you measure the level of impact you've had in comparison to where you started when you developed this roadmap? What is the measure around what's supposed to happen here?
And Zoe, is a long list. We will not have the time to go through it. But as I go through each of those key action area, in my head, I'm tying it back to the objective. What is it that we are trying to accomplish here, and how is it going to address or end SGBV, right? It goes back to what I was saying from the beginning, that it may be somewhere, but we did not see the root causes. And so whatever you're doing, how does it address the problem we are trying to solve? That's something that is jumping out of me as we print and reproduce NAP on child labor, as well as support for visibility material, trained pathologists, lab technicians, staff in all one-stop center. And this is still in September 2020.
Yeah.
How did they even come up with these things that again, it goes back to objective, because should be your SMART goals, right? Should be measurable, achievable. How did it come to the point that we achieve these things in September 2020? I don't know what goes into that. Any ideas? That this was doable within this period? Because like within a month time, right? Because they started this in 2020.
When I look at this thing, Dennis, honestly, and I stand to be corrected, I honestly, when I look at a document, because the issue of rape and sexual gender-based violence in all its forms is not something new to Liberia as a country, as a society. This is something that we've talked about so many different times. And when I look at a document like this being produced as a roadmap, the only thing that comes to mind is, okay, is it because there have just been so much tension and pressure from women standing up, against a lot of these SGBV issues? And this was something thrown out there to kind of put a little lid over it for a while, because it doesn't seem like a lot of thought was put into this, honestly. I mean, there's no answers for some of the things in here and how they came upon that. There's no, back to your point, there's no identification of root causes and the complexities around these issues. There's nowhere where there's a mention of the phases in which they will even be rolled out or implemented. Yes, what we targeting in phase one, whether it's sensitization, education. Yes, what we're targeting in phase two. How do we measure what impact we've had in each phase of this? This is literally a project we're taking on. How do we implement? How do we roll out our implementations in different phases and measure what has been impactful in stage one and what needs to change as we roll into phase two? So it just tells me that there's not really a lot of thought being put around it. When I saw something too that caught my attention. I know this is a topic that Jackie will love. It was about um, temporarily, I hope I'm using the right word, temporarily eradicating
Old school.
bush schools, the term it, yes. And I'm asking myself, okay, female genital mutilation is not the only thing that defines these societies. There are a lot more than it. Are we looking to help with the practices that we think are not bad, are bad, and figure out on how we can educate our people along the lines of these practices? Or are we just putting it all in one blanket and say, okay, let's just get rid of everything, all the cultural, the cultural strength of our society, everything that defines who we are as a people culturally, just to be able to attend to one aspect of that entire bigger practice of culture. So that right there tells you there's not a lot of thought put into this document at all.
Yeah,
Talking about that, is that even achievable to
I
close
think
all
so.
those schools?
I think
It's
so.
like, it's
I don't
like
think so.
no, it's like, you know what it's like? It's like my husband got a parable. He said it's like trying to throw the baby in the bathwater away. You said the bath water is a little bit too dirty and we want the child clean. Rather than lifting him out of the tub and rinse him, you say, you know what, the water dirty, let's leave the baby in the tub and throw everything away. That's exactly what that approach is. That's not even achievable. The only thing that will do, create a lot of division, further division, and makes it even harder to accomplish what needs to be done. Now you create an environment of we versus them, which will be what we call the traditional people versus the quote unquote educated people, and you got two groups of people. And the more pressure you put on the traditional people, the only option you leave them with is not to eradicate female genital mutilation. It's rather for them to go in hideouts and do what they continue to do, because you've not given them an opportunity where they can safely practice other aspects of the culture that strengthens the culture, and show them and tell them and educate them on why a certain aspect of certain practices needs to be eliminated. You can't put all in one basket. So I feel that's just trying to add more fuel to the fire in terms of what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and Dennis, one of the things is that we're talking about funding, right? And we kept saying that, you see, one of the dangers of this roadmap is that it depends also on donor funding, right? And so, of course, when donors come, they come with their requirements, right? Get rid of this, get rid of this. So one of the things that, of course, that's all over globally is get rid of female genital mutilation. Nobody wants female genital mutilation. Zoe and I, we're against it, as most people are, But to reiterate what she said, there are good elements in the sandy and porous society that should be retained. And even some of those things like respect for elders and things, those could be infused in the curriculum, in the religious and moral curriculum, instead of saying, "Oh, how many commandments are there?" You can indigenize the curriculum. Like how they do in Rwanda. They use some elements of that for the Kachacha court or something. You have to bring your culture also to help you in this fight against SGBV. But I think also is that one of the problems is that it, so much of the funding is dependent on international donors. But if you look at one of those, I think it's 1.2. No, it's 1.18. engage with the office of the president to renew the executive order banning FGM until a law on FGM can be passed. That was for October. But the president hasn't established any executive order. At least I haven't read where he has established that. And you don't need funding for that. You just need him to establish, to do an executive order to ban, to ban it until a law can be passed. But as Zoe said, and I agree, you need to show the people the harmful effects of female genital mutilation before those things can happen.
And we'll go through let's read some comments, and then quickly we go through our. I know we have discussed it a little bit more, but we'll talk about weaknesses, strength, and then we'll make our recommendation. But before then, let's read some comments. Norris J. FGM is a bad practice. It needs to stop.
We all agree. We're not saying that it shouldn't stop. It needs to stop. Yeah.
Yeah, and then let me emphasize that again, because sometimes when you're having the discussions, I don't think people are really listening. Nobody on this platform say it is in favor of FGM. Everybody on the platform says female genital mutilation needs to stop. What I'm saying is, do not raid the traditional people of every cultural practice that forms a part of the standard society in our poor society in an attempt to stop female genital mutilation. It's possible to eradicate that practice and still maintain other aspects of the culture that strengthens us as a people culturally.
Yeah. And the emphasis that has been placed on it, or the more or draconian measures, tells me that it is the major, according to the Roman, as far as I can see, looks to me that is the major cause of SGBV in Liberia. I don't see them anyone saying, like the teacher who is molesting the child in the class. I'm not seeing the big shot. I'm not saying anything about criminalizing these things. Why can't we have executive order to say any teacher who sells grades for sex should go to jail? Or underage, you talk about the underage marriage in the tradition, but what's about the underage sex that goes on in the cities among well-to-do people? Why is the emphasis so much on FGM as if it's the major one? But let's read some more comments. Mary Dia Gia said, Liberia, most of them have been child molesters as well as kidnappers. No one cares, so they continue. FGM is the simplest, easiest topic to discuss, so the gender minister usually wrong with this. That's from Evelyn Tue. Evelyn also said, well, we cannot assume it was done because it was done. It would have been either documented on the website, Facebook, or social media. And that was to your point, Jackie. If we say the concept was already developed, Evelyn is saying we'll see it. Education in Liberia is non-practical. If you can memorize your notes for the test and pass, you are the smartest. Josh Lobo is saying great discussion. Sam Wallow said the roadmap was designed that way so as to declare success. And I think he has a point there. This one from Ahmed, SGBV is more than just emphasis on rape or FGM. I argue we focus on gender and development more broadly by involving women and girls' decision-making processes, bringing women and girls to the table and elevating women in our society. Women know what's good for them, their families, and communities. SGBV is a human rights violation. It's health and economic problem. It is psychological and mental health abuse problem. And that's why even I want to kind of agree with him partly. That's why when the emphasis is on donors, there are a lot of things that we can do to get there instead of even waiting. Our very laws can be strengthened. I mean, if somebody violates someone, the law say that person, goes to court and that's a crime. Are we even doing that? Let me read one more comment and then we can go to our strengths and weaknesses. Franklin Wheeler, I don't think we should focus on waiting to building a correction facility for sexual abuse crime. Sexual crime should be considered as a capital crime, and as such, those who commit those heinous crimes must be sent to Bela Yala. even if we don't have a separate court, why can't we still judge these people? I suspect the plan and roadmap are copied from someone else's playbook and was effective in the country in which it was designed to be used. But the administration probably doesn't have the necessary talent to get it accomplished in Liberia. Your reaction to those comments, and then we go to our strengths and weaknesses.
I agree that the SGBV is a human rights violation. Definitely, I agree on that. It has the accompanying health and mental issues. I do agree. I agree with Mr. Weller that we do need a prison. The sooner they build it, the better. I don't know about whether it was copied from somebody else's playbook. I do know that it seems as if there's so many pieces that's not coherent. You know, it just pulled and pulled, and you read it, but there's no flow. You know, so I don't know. Although I may tend to agree with Mr. Waldo, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
Zoe?
Yeah, same here. I do agree with most of the comments, and yeah, SGBV is something that goes beyond just FGM and rape. It comes down. We even talked about this on the other show about the Liberian woman. It comes down to the issue of gender equality in our society and a lot of other issues that drive those factors. But when you look at this particular roadmap, I don't know if this was copied from somebody else's playbook, but one thing I can say for sure is not structured in a way that seems to actually want to do anything achievable. And it makes me want to almost agree with the commenter who said that it's an easier way to claim success because it doesn't tie into anything that holds you accountable in any sustainable way. So it's easier to say, yeah, we develop a concept. What defines that concept? How is it streamlined? How do you measure it? What are the actions to be taken? So I do agree with the comments from those who messaged in.
And one more, Steve Lawson said the Minister of Gender said on Spoon TV that the government is about to buy 4 DNA machines, but they are waiting for the flight to start coming in the country. I think that was the time the flights were not going. All right. So generally, we have. Let's talk about the strength and the weaknesses of this document. I know we talk a little bit more about the weaknesses. Let's talk about the strength.
Well,
Yeah, let me start. The idea that we can even come up with a roadmap that hey, we're trying to do something here. That's a big deal because it's a roadmap. We know what they say they're going to do, and so it's something that we can see and say, okay, you're doing something here. I think that's one of the biggest strengths that I see. Jackie?
well, I mean, there are some good things. I mean, one of the outcomes is to increase access to information and protection and specialized services. That's one of the outcomes, and they're trying it because I see that the budget for family planning has been increased from 3,000 to 10,000. I mean, yeah, from 3,000 to 10,000. So that's a good thing. So for that, I would say well done. They're working on that. But another one is that they are calling for the ratification, right? They're going to ratify the ILO Convention 138 on the minimum age for employment. So it's going to help the young kids so that you can hire an 80-year-old once you get the minimum age for employment. So they're going to ratify that. My concern is that they have not ratified C-120, which is hygiene, right? If the person is working bathroom, they have not ratified 131, which is minimum wage. So if the child is working, how much are you going to pay the child? And they have not ratified 106, which is weekly rest, right? For the child to rest on weekends. Another one is that for December 2020, they're going to renew the executive order against alcohol and tobacco sales to minors. That's a good thing that they're doing. I don't understand the one that says they will review the children's law to establish grading and punishment. are they going to resort to beating kids? If they don't, I don't understand that one. But the fact that they've ratified the convention on the minimum age for employment, that's a good thing. The fact that they have increased the family planning budget, that's also a good thing. And of course, declaring rape as a national crisis, that is a good thing. So I think that we have a little bit of good in it. Not a lot.
Right. But Jackie, what does declaring the rape as national crisis do?
Well, it's supposed to bring it to the forefront, right? So if it's a national crisis, you're supposed to pay more attention to it. You're supposed to allocate more funds to it. But if you should I go on to the weaknesses or should I wait?
Yeah, wait. Let's talk about the strength. We want strength.
Yeah. Well, what's strength? They've ratified the ILO, so that's good, and they've increased family planning, so that's good.
Okay.
No, I will, let's not take everything away from that. I will agree with Jackie on those 2 points. And then the overall greatest strength, I think, is actually first acknowledging that there's a problem, right? As much as there is, this seemed to me personally like a wish list, the greatest strength of even having a wish list is the fact that there's a problem and you have an idea of what needs to happen to have that problem fixed. The biggest question becomes is, are you willing to invest into what it takes to turn your wishes into reality? I think that's where we're stuck right now. Yeah, the greatest strength, they didn't know what's supposed to happen. So that's a wonderful wish list. The greatest weakness for me is, are we ready? Are we willing? Not just ready, are we willing to transform the wishes into reality? I think that's where we stuck with the roadmap.
So you're saying these are just aspirations?
Mostly aspirations.
Jackie, the weakness.
Oh, how much time do we have? Okay, so yeah. Well, if you look at this slide and you go all the way to almost the last one, right? If we could, then it's just I think the very last the pie chart. If you look at the pie chart,
yeah,
right, the pie chart tells you that this roadmap and all of the accompanying things associated with it is going to cost $6 million, right? It says $6 million, and with the $6 million, it will be allocated to different ministries, but 23% will be for the Ministry of Gender, which will be the largest percentage will be for the Ministry of Gender. Yeah, that one. Yeah, 26% will be for the Gender Ministry. So I wanted to look at the budget, if I may, because I think that this is the crux of the matter. Now, 26% goes to gender. Let's look at the gender budget for a second. 2019 to 2020 budget, $1,677,000, right? Then we get to 2020 to 2021, $3 million. So the government is putting his mouth, is putting money where his mouth is. $3 million will be allocated to the gender ministry. Still not enough. They need $6 million to do the roadmap, but that's a huge increase, right? From 1 million to 3 million. Now, why such a big jump? Here's why. The salaries, right? They've employed so many people that the salaries at the gender ministry, in 2019, it was 1,507,000. That's salaries. In 2020 to 2021, it's going to be $1,774,000. That's salaries. Now, if you look at that, the operational expenses, right? 2019, it was 60,000. 2020, 36. So what you're saying is that you're going to have a lot of workers doing nothing, because if goods and services is 138,000, and then you have operational expenses at 36, but you have salaries at 1,700,000 and 1,774,000. What are these people going to be doing? You know, if the operational budget has been cut, or if the goods and services has decreased, what are they going to be doing? Now, let's look at the subsidies, right? We're saying that we want to end SGBV. We want it to end, right? And one of the things they said was to empower people, to empower the young people economically as well. Now, but the subsidies has been reduced, right? So the river says, and I will tie this together. So you have in river says you have an orphanage, right? And that orphanage used to get some money from the government, and it helped the people in the orphanage, because then they stay in the orphanage and they get maybe 16, 17 before they leave. But they have no more subsidy, right? So where are they going to get money? So what that translates into, either you're telling these little kids to go out and find money if they want to live in this place, or there's no money available. And if you look at Cape Mount and Bummy, the subsidies for these orphanages is just $532. $532, right? And I will tell you why this is very interesting to me. So you're telling me that you have all these people, all this money, and the money is not evenly allocated. But I have I found something very interesting. There is money going to, whereas there's no money, or there's a very small amount going to the orphanages, going to the albinos society and things like that. There's 213,451 going to something called Amuje Leaders. It's an organization associated with Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. And okay, that is not my question. My issue is Amuje Leaders. They say it is made up of current ministers, former ministers, eminent persons from around Africa, right? They can afford to fund their own organization. When you are cutting budgets for orphanages, and yet you're saying you have a roadmap, but then you have an organization like this, Amuje Leaders, who allocation went from 0%, zero. They had no allocation a few years ago, to 213,451. So my question is, why? Why is this organization more important than orphanages? So for me, Dennis, I would say that this roadmap is doomed if you don't put money where your mouth is. You have to start looking at the budget and reallocating, you know? And when I say reallocating, you're saying to us that, look, we need to protect and save our young people. This is our roadmap. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at this budget. And these people that are getting all this money, we want to know why they're getting this money. And these orphanages are getting 532. So I would say to you that the major weakness that I see is in the budget. Prioritization, funding, allocation, subsidies. And until we can look into it and say, no, something is wrong, 4 DNA machines will not cut it. Take this 213,000 that you're giving to this organization.
Exactly.
Buy more.
Do you know what this MJ organization is?
Yeah, they said it's for leaders, women leaders, empowerment of women leaders.
What is the mission? What's the vision? What they do?
They empower. It's an initiative, right? It says it means in crew we are going up. Liberian, it's launched on International Women's Day, right? And it's the Ellen Johnson Amuje Initiative Center.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah.
Amuje. So maybe it will, and there was no concept developed for Amuje. let's look at, okay, we talk about the strength, the weaknesses. Let's talk about the recommendation. What do we recommend for uh, the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection, the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Youth and Sports, the Ministry of Education, the Monrovia City Corporation? This whole group make up this interministerial task force. What are the recommendations? The way you want to start?
Well, several recommendations first. I think the first thing is figuring out how to turn these concepts as they are right now into actions. What are practical actions that can be formulated? And I think Jackie talked about some of those things earlier on when it came to even the educational aspect of it. I think a lot of it should cover the budget extensively, which I think is a key part because you cannot do anything in the absence of budget. Even when I looked at the pie chart that they had on the last slide, the distribution of the budget over there, maybe it's just me, it didn't even make sense to me at all. Like the areas that actually impact this endeavor the most get the least percentage, and the
Yes.
areas that have least work or hands on into this endeavor get the most percentage of their $6 million. So that's the first thing, is reallocating that budget where it makes sense and the money is being used in the areas that they should be designated for. The second thing is community engagement when it comes to our young people, within the issue of SGBV is not just sensitizing and working on keeping a victim, teaching you how not to be a victim. What about we teach others how not to victimize these young girls? So let it be an inclusive structure around the educational aspect that there's a lot of little materials out there I see, for even like what Brenda's doing, which I really think it hats off to her for the little girls because they had the most impacted. But we also need to start teaching the little boys. Second thing, accountability. Most of our third thing now, accountability at all levels of society, religious organizations, government. Believe it or not, and that's something that's known in Liberia. The history of these sexual and gender-based violence is not restricted to just the uneducated or the interior however we want to turn them. These things are mostly influenced by those who actually have means, those who we consider prominent figures, those who we call the educated ones within the society, and they hide behind the garment of their education, their power, their influence, and nothing, there's no accountability. And unfortunately, some of these same people are the same ones who are held, who are put in these positions of responsibilities on how these structures and these processes supposed to happen. And if I know that I'm going to set up a process or a system that holds me accountable, it makes it difficult for that to even happen in the first place. And so I think accountability across, what are we putting in place? If a pimping boy in red light is charged with rape, for example, I mean, rape is not SGBV, but that's just one simple example, and he gets prosecuted, and maybe we say he goes to jail, that's fine. If a minister or a teacher or somebody higher up there is charged with sexually molesting a child, what's on the books for them? Is there anything that say maybe they are prosecuted? Is there anything that say that they are not allowed to hold public office again? Is there what measures do we put in place? And I think that those are some of the things that need to be considered. Then back to what Dennis talked about a little bit already, the root causes. We cannot handle the issue of rape without identifying the root causes. We know most of them, but I think that's something we need to drive and dive deeper into. The root causes need to be addressed. What causes the issue of rape, of inequality, a lot of other than just even rape? Look at take for example jobs for young women, even young men. A young woman applies for a job, her chances of getting hired is dependent on her whether she sleeps with the person who's in charge of their hiring department. Those inequalities, those barriers that are being placed before that create this huge inequality between how we treat girls, women, and men need to be addressed. So just drafting up some roadmap that has nice fancy words in it and that will be appealing just to the visually, it does nothing. It to me it just looks like just another thing thrown out there, and in a couple of months we'll be flat back to where we started again.
Jackie?
And just one last point, Jackie talked about something that I think is really important with the whole influence of the international community and donors. We put ourselves in a position where we are constantly dependent on others, and as a result, the decisions we make are not our own. The decisions we make are always to appease what the other person from the outside wants to see. So we are always conforming to what best suits everybody else around the world, except what suits us culturally. And that goes back even to this, what we're talking about, the whole eradication of Bush school rather than focusing on the eradication of FGM. It goes back to that. Right now, people paying taxes. Liberians are being taxed on their salaries. I don't know if I stand to be corrected. I think 25 or 30%, and it's taking effect. Why can't we take some of this money and allocate them to the place to these endeavors that mean most to our society, rather than always sitting there, stretching out our hands, and at the end of the day, we are forced to conform to what everybody else wants us to do just because who controls the money controls and defines the morality of our country.
Yeah, Jackie, you eat my rice, you got to sing my song.
Yes. Yes. And before I go, I read the comment from Sam Wallow about associating this one. Yeah. I didn't say that AMUJ was a crew organization. I said that if you look at their website, I was reading their website, and the website, the first thing it says is that AMUJ is a crew word. It means we are going up. So I was simply trying to explain what the name means. I wasn't saying that it's a crew organization. Far from it. I was only reading Sam. So I'm sorry if you didn't see that. Dennis, I agree with what Zoe said. You know, the roadmap. We still have a long way to go. What I will say is that one thing that I saw in the roadmap, or that I did not see, let me put it that way, one of the absence of it is there's not a huge concentration on civil society. You know, it's like everything is left up to these agencies. All they're going to do this, the roadmap, they're going to do this. We're going to fix the curriculum. We're going to build the prisons. We're going to bring a DNA machine. There is no, at least I didn't see any part of the roadmap that says the civil society, the religious society, we're going to come together and we're going to work to help our young people, and not even our young people, but the victims to do this. I didn't see that. So I think that it's wrong to think that somebody from outside, as Zoe said, will come just because they are funding it, will come and determine your morality or tell you what is good and what is not good for your country. I think that we need civil society. You know, I mean, I talk to people and they will say, oh, I haven't read the roadmap. Why? Why haven't you read the roadmap? You should read the roadmap. The roadmap should be discussed by religious leaders. It should be discussed by civil society in the schools. The education ministry should be the one that would say to them, oh, how can we infuse morality into our curriculum instead of just saying, how many disciples did Jesus have? You know, let's go to the mosque to go see the mosque. And, you know, how many pillars does a mosque have? And it's very intense if you look at this religious and morality syllabus. But you need civil society's help in this. And when I say civil society, Dennis, I'm talking about all of us. There are too many times I've seen somebody say something on the side and we just kind of laugh or let it go. No, we have to continue to infuse in our society civility. You know, we even on social media, we need to be able to say this is not okay. We are not going to do this. You know, And Evelyn, we did have people on. It's just that the internet broke down because we had two experts from Liberia. It was the internet that didn't allow them to come on. So of course there will be a part two, and we will have more people on from Liberia. But what I'm saying is also is that it's not just only the roadmap, Dennis. There must be a culture of respect in the country. And that culture can be enhanced and taught and magnified by the church and civil society. So as we go on, we're not saying that the roadmap is a bad thing. We're saying that it needs to be strengthened. There are some things that, if they need help, they can go to civil society. We think this is a good start, but we're saying that the expectations were too to have something done in September and then go back, reread it, see what is doable in a time frame, and then go ahead and do that.
And another group that has been absent, I don't know why our government and people in Liberia are not taking advantage of the diaspora. You have people in the diaspora that can help. I look through the roadmap and I don't see anything like that. Or you could start from an organization like your organization, Jackie, the Sexual SGBV Awareness Group. What can they do? You have all these Liberian psychologists or scientists and everyone else in the diaspora that can help. You have these social media platforms like Focus on Liberia that can help disseminate information. And with all these people, you don't think they have anything to offer. You must depend on the so-called international community. I always say the so-called because I do not believe there's any community of that nature that is together to help you. But that's the group that we always look up to make these laws. And because of this, what we're supposed to be doing, we don't even try, because there's a lot that we can do as people. You can go to my hometown in Dudweke and you get very good advice on how to approach SGBV. But you don't include any of these people, and you are talking about partners and donors and people from far away called international community. No, that's not going to work. The people know, and that's why when they even blaming traditional schools, I was born in the interior. I did not witness any rape where I was born. So these crimes are mainly in the urban areas compared to but now we see that bush schools are the culprits here. So there's more soul searching that needs to be done. There should be little more thorough analysis as to why these things are happening and what is needed before you even develop the roadmap. It looked like these heavyweights got together somewhere and came up with this document. There should be more involvement of the people, the people that are in the community that these things affect. I think they can come up with something that is more robust than this, has Zoe said, aspirations. Right now, they are just aspirations. There is no way to evaluate them, because how do we evaluate developing a concept? Or how do we evaluate operationalizing a DNA machine with no timeline, with no measurable objectives? There's no way we can just know. And so I still agree with the person who said, well, maybe they just want the declaration of quick successes and say, we've done it. But there's more, and we are here to help. That's the bottom line. Well, let's conclude. Your final thoughts. And before that, let me put a few comments here. Okay. He said the Liberian Congress does not want diaspora Liberians for the fear of competition and job. It is becoming increasingly clear now. And it also said this is on dual citizenship. Jackie, what is this website is about?
No, I was just sending it out. That's the one that I said is getting the $213,000, and we want to know why. But I was simply sending it to Sam to say that that's the one that used the Amuje, and they explained it about the crew. Yeah.
Yeah, Amuje, I understand that crew. Amuje means going up or going forward, something of that nature. Let's conclude this. Your final thoughts. The roadmap in ending SGBV violence. Is any SGBV in sight based on what we've seen so far? We are in 2021, and we have just one, which is declaring SGBV as a crisis. That's all that's been achieved. Are we on par are we on track in achieving ending SGBV by 2022? That doesn't seem likely. Your final thought. Let me start with Zoe.
Well, looking if we're going off of the roadmap and what was formulated in this document, I would say no, because that means we're already lagging behind, based on the way the document is structured. Secondly, the document is not structured in a way that provides tangible actions and practical actions that can be taken. Is ending SGBV something that can happen? Yes, it is achievable, just not under the current structure of this roadmap. But it is something that can be achieved. And I think it's through the collective efforts of every Liberian. This is not something that happens in just a conference room with, ministers and international partners. This is something that can be achieved through every level of the society. Teachers, religious leaders, our chiefs, our local chiefdoms, just every hands, all hands on deck is the kind of approach that Liberia needs right now. And until we are willing, there's a saying that economics equals morality. And I kind of believe that because when it comes to the issue of morality and what best serves a group of people, it is always determined by the economy and who controls the money. So until we are willing to get to the point where we can put forth what is what is in the best interest of Liberia, what is in the best interest of saving the next generation of children, the next generation of leaders rather, and what is in the best interest of saving what defines the strength of our cultural heritage and what defines Liberians. It's a long road ahead, and so that requires all hands on deck.
Jackie?
Yeah, I agree with Zoe. I think also that when she talked about collective working together, I totally agree with that. I think that I mean we have our organization, so I'm not dissing our organization in any way, but I think we have way too many organizations that deal with SGBV. I think we need to come together. All these little groups come together because we are fighting for the same thing. We are fighting for the elimination of sexual and gender-based violence from our country. So if we become one force, I'm sure that we can help to eliminate SGBV. And I think also that our religious leaders have really failed us, because the church or the mosque or any religious center should be the rallying point for speaking about the ills of the society. Too often we see that the people who have power, they're in the churches and they are father of the year, mother of the year, but these are the people who are really endangering our kids. So we do need collective effort. We do need to be able to speak truth to power and say what you've done is wrong and you will be penalized for it. I think that I agree that whoever pays the drummer determines the dance. So if we can get together, and say this is where we want our country to go in terms of the safety of our kids. How many times you've been visiting a friend and you see your friend say to his son or his daughter, go buy me some cigarettes, go get me a bottle of beer, and you think nothing of it. But these are the little things that culminate into greater harm to our kids. So I think that we need to work together, as a country. I think that we need to read this roadmap, and we need to write about this roadmap, and we need to say this is not enough. We want this, this, this. Everybody should read the roadmap. Everybody should have something to say about the roadmap, how we should get to where we are going, and the government should start reallocating resources to make their goal of eliminating SGBV a reality. And the indigenous society, our rural areas have a part to say in it, and they should be brought in. I mean, you cannot have a place where you just look at the roadmap. It says stakeholders, international NGOs. No. We need a collective ownership, and that collective ownership will work together to solve this collective problem that we have. Yeah, thank you.
Jackie, where can we find the roadmap?
Well, I did. I'm assuming that it's on the website.
No, it's not. I've checked everywhere on the website. I don't find it.
Then Focus on Liberia should make it or put it on their website, because I mean, if you go to okay, there's another thing, right? If you look at the budget, look at the gender budget, and just look at ICT. There's no budget for website maintenance, right? So you have to look at the gender side and say, how can we help you? Can we help you put this document up? If this is a roadmap, it's the property of every Liberian. So I mean, right now, that's what we're doing, right? We're calling on the gender ministry, put the roadmap up, please, on your website so people can see and read it.
On that note, I want to say thank you so much for your time. Yeah, Zoe, you have something? Go ahead.
No, just buttressing Jackie. I say it should be something accessible to all Liberians.
Definitely. Minister Piso Tau, we are calling on you and the gender ministry to do more in making the roadmap accessible to all Liberians and the progress of the roadmap transparent to all of us so that we can see it and help you in whatever area that you need. Please do not hesitate to call on us. Drop us an email, focusonliberia@gmail.com, and we are willing to help through the different people that we are connected with and see what help we can give. So, because SGBV affects all of us, and we should all work to end it. It is not a business for just government, it's all of us. If we don't do it, if we blame you, it's our nieces, our nephews, our sisters, aunties, and uncles that are suffering the brunt of the effect of SGBV. We are here to help. On that note, I want to thank you all for coming. I want to say thank you to our viewers and those who will watch later. Until then, on behalf of all of us here at Focus on Liberia, my name is Dennis Jar, saying have a good and godly night. But we're not leaving you until we play our closing song that says, we are all Liberians. Good night and God bless.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.